Hey everyone, you ever get the feeling the world of communications is basically playing musical chairs? Like as soon as you think you found your perfect platform, the music stops and everything shuffles around again.
It's definitely a dynamic landscape.
That's putting it mildly. But some things just work, no matter how much things change. And today we're taking a deep dive into one of those enduring tools, the press release. We've got PR Newswire's 2024 State of the Press Release report in front of us, ready to extract those golden nuggets of insight. Think of this as your cheat sheet for staying ahead of the curve.
And what's fascinating is how this report challenges a lot of assumptions. There's often a perception that press releases are a bit old school in our digital world, but the data tells a different story.
Right. You'd think they'd be extinct by now, like finding a fax machine in a museum. But this report says 93% of PR pros are sending the same amount or more press releases compared to last year. So for anyone working in comms, that should tell you something. This tool is far from obsolete.
Exactly. And it's not just PR folks clinging to old habits. The report highlights that the vast majority of journalists, we're talking 74%, still want to receive press releases. In fact, 68% find them the most useful type of content they get from PR professionals.
So what does that tell you? Even in our fast-paced, constantly connected world, a well-crafted press release can be your secret weapon for cutting through the noise and landing right in the inbox of the people who matter most. Now, let's talk about how the press release itself is evolving. One of the biggest buzzwords, or should I say buzz algorithms out there, is AI, and it's starting to make its way into the world of press releases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The report found that 26% of PR professionals are already using AI in some capacity for their press releases.
Okay, so before we all start picturing robots churning out press releases in some dark server room, what's the reality of how AI is being used right now?
Think of it more like a high-tech intern than a robot overlord. The report shows AI is being used strategically, mostly for tasks like generating headlines, drafting body copy, and even proofreading. One respondent even described it as having an intern to get the first draft done.
So it's not about replacing human creativity, it's more about augmenting it, giving PR pros an extra set of digital hands.
Precisely. What's most interesting for me is that the report emphasizes how crucial human creativity and strategy still are in this process. It's not about handing over the reins to AI, it's about understanding how to leverage this new tool effectively to enhance our work.
Which makes sense. You still need that human touch to craft a narrative that resonates, understands the nuances of your message, and connects with your audience on a deeper level.
Absolutely. And that brings us to a crucial point. Even if you have the most cutting-edge AI tools at your disposal, if your press release doesn't grab attention, it's going to get lost in the shuffle.
It's like that old saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So how do we make sure our press releases stand out?
It all starts with a killer headline. The report dove deep into what makes a press release headline pop, and it turns out intriguing verbs make a big difference.
Give us the good stuff. Which verbs are catching everyone's eye?
Verbs like reveal and unveil tend to generate more views. It's about piquing curiosity and making people want to learn more.
Makes sense. It's like offering your audience a sneak peek behind the curtain. Now, for those of us who aren't Shakespeare, how long should these captivating headlines be?
The sweet spot seems to be between 51 and 75 characters. But don't panic if you need a few more headlines. Up to 100 characters still perform well. So focus on clarity and intrigue over cramming everything into one sentence.
Got it. Keep it concise, but don't force it. Now I'm guessing words on a page aren't enough anymore. We live in a world dominated by visuals, so how does that play into crafting a press release that truly pops?
You're spot on. We're visual creatures, and that extends to press releases. The report found that releases incorporating multimedia like photos, videos, or even infographics get significantly more engagement.
It's like the difference between reading a restaurant review and actually seeing mouth-watering pictures of the food.
Exactly. And guess what? Journalists are hungry for those visuals too. 72% of them reported using images provided by PR professionals in the past year. So not only do visuals make your press releases more engaging for your audience, but they also increase your chances of getting picked up by the media. It's a win-win.
Okay, so we've got our attention-grabbing headline, our eye-catching visuals, but I have a feeling there's more to this puzzle. In today's interconnected world, it's not enough to just hit send and hope for the best, right?
You're absolutely right. Your press release is only the first act. Think of it as a spark that ignites a much larger conversation.
I like that, the spark. So how do we keep that conversation going?
That's where a multi-channel strategy comes in. This report found that a whopping 92% of PR pros are repurposing their press release content across different channels.
That makes so much sense. Why let all that hard work go to waste? Tell us more about how they're doing this effectively.
They're turning their press releases into social media posts, weaving them into blog articles, even creating engaging videos. This multi-channel approach not only maximizes reach, but ensures their message resonates with a wider audience across different platforms.
It's like a ripple effect, amplifying the impact of that initial press release.
Hmm,
What I'm hearing is that it's not just about getting your message out there, it's about meeting your audience where they are and speaking their language.
exactly. Each channel has its strengths. Right. Social media is great for sparking quick conversations, while a blog post allows you to dive deeper into a topic. And then there's video, which has become so powerful for storytelling.
It's true, people love video. It's like getting a front row seat to the action.
Exactly. So instead of just sending out a traditional text-based press release, imagine creating a short, snappy video that brings your news to life. Or designing an infographic that distills complex information into easily digestible visuals.
It's about thinking outside the press release box and finding creative ways to make your message stand out in a crowded digital landscape. Now, this is all great information, but I have to ask, with so much to consider, are there any common pitfalls PR pros should be aware of?
Absolutely. Even with the best tools and strategies, there are always challenges. One that came up repeatedly in the report is the issue of targeting. Think about it. 25% of PR pros said their biggest hurdle is making sure their press releases actually reach the right journalists and influencers.
Which makes sense. Newsrooms are shrinking. Everyone's bombarded with information. Cutting through that noise to reach the right people is no easy feat.
Precisely. And even if you do grab their attention, you're still competing with countless other stories vying for coverage. In fact, 38% of the PR professionals surveyed said that making their press releases stand out was their biggest challenge.
It's like trying to get your voice heard at a rock concert. So how do we make sure our message doesn't get drowned out in the noise?
That's where truly understanding your target audience comes in. You need to know what makes them pick, what keeps them up at night, and how they prefer to consume information. Are they glued to Twitter? Do they devour industry reports? Tailoring your approach based on this deep understanding is essential.
It's like the difference between casting a wide net and aiming for a specific target. You're much more likely to hit the bullseye when you know exactly where you're aiming. And this is where those core communication skills become invaluable, right? Crafting a compelling narrative, understanding the art of storytelling, and paying attention to every detail.
Exactly. And it's interesting you mentioned storytelling because the report subtly highlights how important this is becoming in the world of press releases. Think about it.
Yeah.
You're not just conveying information. You're trying to capture someone's attention, evoke emotion, and make them care about what you have to say.
Especially in a world where people are constantly bombarded with information, a good story can be the difference between a press release that gets read and one that gets lost in the shuffle. So how do we weave compelling narratives into our press releases?
It starts with understanding what makes a story compelling. There needs to be a hook, something that grabs the reader's attention from the get-go. Then you need to build tension, create a sense of anticipation, and ultimately deliver a satisfying resolution.
And don't forget about the emotional connection. Facts and figures are important, but it's the human element that truly resonates.
Absolutely. People remember stories that make them feel something. Think about incorporating anecdotes, quotes, or even case studies that illustrate the human impact of your message.
Now, we've talked a lot about the PR side of things, but I'm curious about the journalists themselves. They're the gatekeepers of information, so understanding their world and the challenges they face feels crucial. Does the report offer any insights into that?
It does, and it's quite eye-opening. One of the biggest challenges journalists face today, according to the report, is maintaining credibility as a trusted news source. With the rise of misinformation and the sheer volume of content online, it's harder than ever for them to sift through the noise and determine what's reliable.
Which is interesting because that's where a well-crafted press release can be incredibly valuable, right? It comes directly from a brand or organization, often vetted by reputable distribution partners, offering a level of credibility that can be hard to find in the wild west of the internet.
Precisely. You're not just pitching a story, you're offering yourself as a source of reliable, trustworthy information. And in today's world, that's more valuable than ever.
Absolutely. So it's not just about getting our message out there. It's about upholding the highest standards of accuracy, transparency, and ethical conduct in everything we do.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit and revisit those attention-grabbing action verbs we talked about earlier. The report actually reveals which ones are falling flat.
Oh, I'm all ears. Spill the tea. What's the verb that's losing its mojo?
You might be surprised to hear this, but announce, while still incredibly common in press release headlines, isn't necessarily translating to the most views.
Really, I would have thought announce was a safe bet. It's clear and to the point. What's the issue with it?
It seems counterintuitive, but it all comes down to capturing attention in our information-saturated world. The report suggests announce might be losing its luster because it lacks a sense of urgency or excitement.
It's like it's become background noise, blending in with all the other announcements vying for attention.
Exactly. It's like saying, hey, we have something to say rather than, hey, we have something you won't want to miss.
That makes a lot of sense. So it's not just about stating the facts, it's about framing them in a way that piques curiosity and makes people want to lean in and learn more.
Precisely. And this circles back to the importance of multi-channel strategies.
Yeah.
Even the most brilliantly written press release with the most captivating headline won't have much impact if it's not reaching the right audience through the right channels.
Okay, so let's break that down. We touched on repurposing content, but what does a truly effective multi-channel strategy look like in practice?
It's about understanding the strengths and limitations of each channel and crafting a cohesive narrative that unfolds across multiple touchpoints. Think about it. Social media is fantastic for sparking quick bursts of engagement, but you might need a blog post to delve into the topic in more detail. And then there's the power of video.
Which is huge these days. People can't seem to get enough video content. What's the best way to incorporate video into a multi-channel press release strategy?
Imagine turning your press release into a short, snappy video that brings your message to life. It's like giving your audience a front row seat to the story you're telling.
It's so much more engaging than just reading text on a screen.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of other visuals too. Infographics, data visualizations, even thoughtfully chosen memes. These can make your press release content much more shareable and memorable. The key is to think about how people consume information on different platforms.
It's about meeting your audience where they are and speaking their language, which requires really understanding who your audience is, what they care about, and how they consume information.
You got it. A scattershot approach won't cut it. It's about being strategic and intentional with your efforts, crafting a cohesive narrative that unfolds across multiple touch points, each piece working in harmony to create a lasting impression.
This is all fantastic advice, but I have to admit, it's a lot to keep up with. It's like the communication landscape is constantly evolving.
It definitely keeps us on our toes.
Yeah.
But even with all these rapid changes, some things remain constant.
Like what? Give me something to hold on to in this ever-evolving world of communications.
At the end of the day, it's still about connecting with people, telling compelling stories, and building meaningful relationships. The tools might change, the platforms might evolve, but those core principles will always be relevant.
That's reassuring to hear, so we don't have to become robots overnight.
Absolutely not. In fact, I think this is an exciting time to be working in communications.
Really? Why is that?
Because all these new tools and technologies are pushing us to be more creative, more strategic, and more human in our approach.
That's an interesting way to look at it. It's not about humans versus machines. It's about finding that sweet spot where human ingenuity and technological innovation work together to create something truly remarkable.
Exactly. And that's what makes this field so fascinating. There's always something new to learn, a new challenge to tackle, a new way to connect. Speaking of connecting, you mentioned something earlier about AI being used for tasks like proofreading, and it reminded me of a fascinating paradox highlighted in the report.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Even though AI can help us with things like grammar and punctuation, it's still humans who are ultimately responsible for the accuracy and appropriateness of the content.
Precisely. It's like this intricate dance. We're using AI to streamline certain tasks, but also recognizing that it still requires a human eye, a human brain, to catch those subtle nuances that a machine might miss.
It's like having a brilliant intern. You wouldn't just hit publish on their work without giving it a thorough review first, right? You'd want to make sure it aligns with your brand's voice, your company's values, and your own high standards.
Exactly. And that's where critical thinking and a healthy dose of skepticism come into play. We can't just blindly trust these AI tools. We need to be able to assess their output, identify potential biases, and ensure that everything aligns with our own ethical standards and brand values.
It's about being discerning consumers and ethical stewards of these powerful new technologies. We need to use them responsibly and thoughtfully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that highlights a crucial point about the future of work in a world increasingly shaped by AI. It's not just about technical skills. It's about developing those uniquely human capabilities, critical thinking, ethical judgment, emotional intelligence that will set us apart.
It's about finding that balance between leveraging the power of technology while also staying true to our human values and instincts.
Precisely. It's a dance we'll all need to learn if we want to thrive in this ever-evolving world.
Well said. Now, before we move on, I want to circle back to something we discussed earlier, the challenges journalists face in today's media landscape, particularly shrinking newsrooms, and the constant pressure to do more with less. The report touched on this in a way I found quite insightful. It didn't shy away from the challenges, but it also highlighted the incredible resilience and adaptability of journalists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Journalists are the unsung heroes of the information age.
So true. So, what did the report say about how they're adapting?
It emphasized that even with budget cuts, staff shortages, and the relentless pressure to do more with less, journalists are finding innovative ways to deliver compelling and impactful stories. They are dedicated to the craft and committed to truth and transparency.
They're like the superheroes of the information age, fighting for truth, justice, and well crafted narratives.
I love that analogy. It speaks to their passion and dedication.
It's inspiring to know that even though the media landscape is changing dramatically, the core values of journalism remain as strong as ever.
Exactly. As long as we have dedicated individuals passionate about uncovering the truth and sharing it with the world, we have a fighting chance of navigating the complexities of the digital age.
I couldn't agree more. That's a powerful and optimistic thought to carry with us. It's amazing how, even in a world that's constantly buzzing with new tech and platforms, those fundamental human elements, trust, connection, the power of a good story, still holds so much weight.
It's like we're circling back to what makes us human in the first place. In a world overloaded with information, it's those genuine human qualities that cut through the noise and forge lasting connections. And that's something this report really drives home.
It's about forging those genuine connections, and that's a perfect segue into wrapping up our deep dive into the 2024 State of the Press release. What's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
Don't underestimate the power of a well-crafted press release. Even in the age of AI and ever-evolving digital strategies, it's far from extinct. It's a tool that, when used strategically and creatively, can be more effective than ever.
I love that. It's not about clinging to old methods. It's about adapting, evolving, and using every tool at our disposal to tell compelling stories that resonate.
Precisely. It's about understanding that even in our tech-driven world, the human touch is what sets us apart, the ability to connect, inspire, and build trust. And speaking of the human element, the report highlighted something I found really interesting. A significant number of PR pros, despite experimenting with AI, are still a bit hesitant to fully embrace it for press release writing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it speaks to the understanding that while AI can mimic certain aspects of human language, it still lacks that intangible spark, that creativity, intuition, and emotional intelligence that make a piece of writing really sing.
It's like AI can provide the ingredients, but it takes a skilled chef to know how to combine them into a culinary masterpiece.
That's a perfect analogy, which brings me to my final, slightly provocative question for you. If AI takes over the more technical aspects of writing, grammar, punctuation, even basic structure, what unique skills will set human communicators apart? What's our superpower in that world?
That's a fantastic question. And I think the answer lies in those uniquely human qualities that AI, at least for the foreseeable future, can't replicate. Empathy, creativity, critical thinking, and the ability to connect with an audience on a truly emotional level. These are the skills that will become even more valuable, even more sought after as technology continues to evolve.
It's about being the architects of connection, the weavers of compelling narratives, the champions of authenticity in a world that's increasingly craving those human touches.
Beautifully said. I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
Yeah. We definitely have. A huge thank you to our incredible expert for guiding us on this deep dive. And to all our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. Keep those questions coming, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time for another deep dive into the world of communications.